You know what I got the other day, Pete? Stephen King's latest. Want to borrow it?
Do you know who you're talking to?
What do you mean?
Andy, when's the last time I read a paper book? It's been decades. I would much rather use Kindle, or better yet, Audible.
What am I thinking? I don't read paper books anymore either. I'm an audiobook guy all the way. For those looking to listen to the books behind the films that we talk about here on Movies We Like, not to mention all the other podcasts in the Next Reel family, get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at thenextreel.com/audible.
There are so many great adaptations from Movies We Like available in audio form.
Early on, we covered Casino Royale with director Matthew Gratzner. You went through all of the 007 books on Audible, right?
I did indeed. What a series. We also covered Room with legendary Dee Wallace and Never Let Me Go with costume designer Alana Mooreshead.
We chatted about Fat City with cinematographer Sam Levy and Silver Linings Playbook with the great composer Harry Gregson Williams.
101 Dalmatians and Bambi.
Apocalypse Now, There Will Be Blood, The Thin Red Line.
There's so many great adaptations with so many great guests, and you can get all these as audiobooks on Audible, along with thousands of other great reads.
Producing this podcast is a lot of fun, but it does take a lot of time. We have already dropped the dynamically inserted ads because they are so annoying and have no connection to our content.
Plus, they just jam those things in wherever they see fit.
We listened when you said you didn't like them. So now, we're directly appealing to you, our dear listener. Please consider an Audible subscription to help support Movies We Like and the Next Reel's family of podcasts.
I've been using Audible along with my family for decades now. I love it, and I've read hundreds of books through it. Couldn't be more pleased with their service, and I know you'll love it too. Head to thenextreel.com/audible and get your free trial. It really helps us out. And you have a world of over 200,000 audiobooks open to you.
So much great material available. Dive in with a free trial and get your first free audiobook at thenextreel.com/audible.
Start listening to amazing audiobooks of your favorite movie source material with your first free audiobook today. That's thenextreel.com/audible. Andy, I know you've never been happier than when you're sitting by a warm fire, snuggled up in a flannel and basking in the glow of an old-school budget spreadsheet.
It is a special day I can shut down the world for a little me time.
In a world full of applications, why do these antiquated documents and spreadsheets still run the world? And why haven't they been updated in over 50 years? That's why we want to talk about Coda.
Coda is a new kind of doc that brings words, data, and teams together. It comes with a set of building blocks that anyone can combine to create a doc as powerful as an app.
Coda runs our entire business here at True Story FM, from show scheduling across dozens of podcasts and scripts for thousands of episodes, to budgets and plans and wikis and more.
Coda lets us see our business in a new light. If you'd like to shine a light on productivity in your business and save money along the way, check out Coda today at thenextreel.com/Coda. Welcome to the Next Reel Speakeasy on rashpixel.fm. I'm Andy Nelson, and that over there is Pete Wright.
Hello, everybody.
Each month on the Next Reel Speakeasy, we invite an industry guest to join us, and instead of serving up their favorite cocktails, they serve up movies that they love, so that we can all talk about them. We'd like to welcome our guest to this month's show, cinematographer Sam Levy. Now based in New York, Sam grew up near Boston, where his movie buff father introduced him to such cinematic classics as Seven Samurai and The Virgin Spring at a young age. Before long, he and his friend were making short films with a VHS camera. His burgeoning love for film eventually led him to Brown University and the Rhode Island School of Design, where one of his teachers, experimental filmmaker Leslie Thornton, gave him the spark he needed to figure out how to turn his idea of being a cinematographer into a reality. While working as a camera assistant, Sam shot his first film, a horror movie with such a tight budget that they had to shoot it on mini DV. Sam continued working as a camera assistant with the likes of legendary cinematographer Harry Savides, while he built his resume as a cinematographer on other low-budget features, finding inspiration from such greats as Sven Nykvist, Nestor Almendros, Gordon Willis, and Conrad Hall. Sam has worked with Kelly Reichardt on Wendy and Lucy, and several films with Noah Baumbach, Francis Ha, While We're Young, and Mistress America. In fact, with While We're Young, Sam actually supervised the printing process of its 35mm print in New York's Technicolor Film Lab, which sadly ended up being the last film print ever made there. Most recently, he worked with Rebecca Miller on Maggie's Plan, starring Julianne Moore, Ethan Hawke, Bill Hader, Maya Rudolph, Wallace Shawn, and Greta Gerwig, currently in theaters. And Sam is currently lensing HBO's Crashing from Judd Apatow and Pete Holmes. Welcome to the show, Sam.
My pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me.
This show has been such a long time coming.
I know. It feels good for this to be happening.
I know, right? I would like to start with a very brief question. You have worked now with Michelle Williams in Wendy and Lucy,
Yes.
and you worked with Katie Holmes in The Romantics.
Yes.
What is your plan to check off the rest of the cast members of Dawson's Creek?
Well, it's top secret, but I could be convinced to reveal it to you guys.
I'm just feeling a Vanderbeek vehicle with your name behind the camera.
Yeah.
I can
Yes.
just feel it.
That would be amazing.
That would be amazing.
That would be amazing. I've actually worked with Katie on 2 projects. The Romantics was one, and I was actually a camera operator on a movie called Pieces of April that we did before that.
Nice.
That's too funny. Great works from fine young actors all around. It's nice to see what they have done with their careers since the Creek.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We're not talking about that today.
No, so what movie are we talking about? We've got one of your favorites, I guess, that we're going to be talking about today, huh?
Yeah, Fat City.
A little bit of John Huston.
That's right.
Why is this one of your favorite films? What stands out as something in this film that just makes it a film that you love and you really love to talk about?
Everything stands out about Fat City. As a cinematographer, the photography is exceptional, but just as a film lover, a film buff, cinephile, whatever you want to call it, the performances are amazing. The music is amazing. The editing is amazing. The production design, it's just incredibly evocative. And it's just, to me, has some great hallmarks of something very cinematic. It's a boxing movie, but it's also a movie about alcoholics. It has like great melancholy, but it doesn't take itself too seriously. There's great comedy. Nicholas Colasanto, who later went on to play Coach in Cheers, the TV show Cheers, is in the movie as a boxing trainer, and he's incredibly funny. It's the thing I always think of first if anyone happens to ask me what my favorite movie is, and if I have to just pick one, I usually think of this one.
Come and lay down by my side.
Let me buy you a drink.
Till the early morning light.
I love you so much.
All I'm taking is your time.
I don't care.
Help me make it through the night. All a man needs is a woman with a good job. I don't care.
Do you remember when you first saw this film? Kind of where were you in your sort of career?
Well, I first heard of this movie before I saw it. It was mentioned a lot in when I first started working as a camera assistant. I would read interviews by cinematographers of the day, like in the early to mid 90s. A lot of people cited this movie as a big influence on them. I don't hear it mentioned as much these days, but I think the generation just prior to mine of DPs was heavily influenced. So I read about this movie a lot before I saw it. Probably first saw it around, like about 15, 16 years ago on DVD. And at the time, it was out of print. It didn't exist on DVD. So it was like sort of the heyday of DVDs, before streaming and before people watched movies on iTunes. It just didn't exist on DVD. So you could find stray VHS copies. And then I first saw it around 2000. It was a copy that someone ripped illegally. That was the only way you could see it on a disc. And it was, kind of bastardized copy, not the best quality. And it absolutely didn't matter. The work just shone through the sort of poor quality of this illegally ripped disc that I generally don't remember how I got a hold of. I was never good at I'm still not good at torrenting, or I I've never done any of that stuff, but I'll occasionally, make exceptions if stuff just doesn't exist out there. If you can't buy it legally, sometimes this is a good case of a movie that I just wouldn't have seen if I couldn't get an illegal copy.
And luckily we have a beautiful Blu-ray out right now by, I think it's Twilight Time that put the Blu-ray out, which looks pretty immaculate. So it's nice that there are people out there who are appreciating these great films and taking care of them, because this is a beautiful, it's a gorgeous film to look at. It's a devastating film to watch. It's really kind of pretty sad story overall. Yet I don't know. I feel that there's definitely glimmers of hope and everything. I think David Kerr of Chicago Reader said that it was John Huston's 1972 restatement of his theme of perpetual loss, and that it's intelligently understated. Which I think it's I think that's very true. I think that it's there is a lot of loss in this film, and I definitely feel it has just kind of a nice sense about it, and the way that it kind of moves, and you kind of move through these people's lives as they're trying to find Fat City, this kind of expression of this place that people want to get to, that you want to have the good life and all of that, and here we are in kind of the slums of Stockton, California, with these various characters who are kind of lost. They may have big ambitious dreams, and it's kind of sad to kind of move through this story with them, because it's as if their dreams are never really going to come true. They just kind of keep figuring out how they can fight or kind of just talk about it and not fight too strongly. It's really interesting. A lot of interesting characters throughout this film.
Yeah, that's very well said. It's to me, it's an extremely evocative film. I think it shows that it's based on a novel. It's also the location to me is paramount. It really. So not the studio, but just is very important. Paramount meaning like the location's important.
Right.
But because the city of Stockton is so evocative, especially at that time. Apparently what was happening at the time this was shot was the whole city was being leveled to create an overpass for an interstate highway, which you see in the opening montage of the movie. There's a great sequence that's been much copied of just, documentary style footage that they shot out of a van. And there's great interviews with Conrad L, the DP, talking about how they went around in a van with curtains on the windows in a VW van, I think it was, and just pointed the camera out of the window and shot people just on the street, people getting their hair cut, just different people on the streets of Stockton. That is so evocative and just beautiful. It's amazing to me. The palette of this movie is so strong. The color palette is so particular, and it feels effortless, like it just happened. Although I'm confident that it's very designed kind of a film, and you see the palette reflected in the documentary style footage, the opening montage. That to me, it's Stockton. It's so not a movie that was filmed in one of our major cities, New York or LA or Chicago. It's something else. It's a different place with a different, its own world with its own space and time, and these characters exist in that space and time, which is very, very slow. Where we spend a lot of time in this one bar. It's just the most exceptional looking scenes that I've ever seen in a bar. Very dark, very evocative. It's just, there's a lot of depth to really just everything in this movie, but in particular the photography and the performances.
I have been trying so hard since I first watched this film. I've watched it all the way through once, and then again almost all the way through. And I am struck by some of the same things. The palette in particular, it's almost kind of jaundiced. It's got this sort of yellow and kind of green tint to it that feels like a sense of kind of putrescence or illness that that combined with
what I would characterize as kind of a hopeful camera. It's a camera that's telling a story, that's showing these people that, in a film that has an almost entire absence of redemptive characters, right? And the camera is trying to tell you this story of people, and you please hope that they come out of it, that at some turn of scene, they are going to find some change of heart, win some battle of will, that they will be able to wake up and achieve something and turn it into something great. And they snatch defeat from the jaws of victory every single turn. And I find it really hard to watch in that regard. And so I'm super torn by this film, because I've been trying to watch it from the eye of kind of camera and production and story, because I had no connection with just about anybody in here. It's like every character in here hurt my feelings. So I walked out like there's no hope at the end. And I think it's probably a battle of expectations, because what I knew of the film was that it was a boxing film, and it's not so much a boxing film, because when I hear boxing film, I hear inspiration, right? I want to see the Cinderella story. And Stacy Keach says of this film, the thing about Fat City that distinguishes it from other boxing movies is the characters start at point A and end up at point A. They don't go anywhere, unlike Rocky, which is more of a Cinderella story. And I think that quote is the blessing and the curse of the film. I think, and I don't want to speak for you, Andy, I think you and I parted ways on that point, right? I think you appreciated that more than I did.
Yeah, I really enjoyed these characters, and I actually really kind of started connecting to them, especially on my second watch of it. I really kind of found so much more going on with the characters, and I found all of their personal struggles to find something better in their lives kind of painful and difficult, and it was really kind of sad to watch, because you could kind of see that they weren't really going to end up getting anywhere in the lives that they were leading the way they were. But at the same time, I started seeing so many moments with these characters where, even though they were in this place, none of them were really working against each other. They, in a sense, really, I felt that they were all kind of trying to kind of help each other. They're all being nice to each other. I mean, there were definitely, difficult characters, like certainly Oma and Tully. They had a little bit of a difficult relationship, but at the same time, I really enjoyed the way that these characters still kind of, they seemed to be kind of kind to each other. Earl, when Tully comes that last time to Oma's place, it's not like he's all upset at him or anything. He has a very kind demeanor. We kind of knew that from earlier, but just the way that he talked to him and with him about his boxing and everything, and it just seemed very kind. And even that last bit with Tully and Ernie, there's definitely a sense of heartbreak as they kind of sit next to each other drinking their coffee. But I still felt there was, I don't know, just the fact that Ernie sticks around to kind of be there for Tully in that particular moment, when really Tully is kind of at the lowest point he's ever been in this film. I was really touched by it.
I'm the same. I can identify with all of these characters. There's something, it's not that my life is so much like their life. It's just, there's a voluptuousness in the presentation of really all of these characters. There's something, maybe it's the humanity or their flaws, that is evocative and speaks to me. It goes beyond, certainly the way this film looks, it just makes me happy. It's the kind of photography and films that I love, but it goes deeper than just the photography and the way it looks. It's really the fabric of the story and the characters is just very satisfying. And even the end of the movie, Stacy Keach just kind of, it's almost like it's really like he's dying, and he looks at the guy making the coffee behind the counter, who is quite old, and he just stares off into space. And it's this incredible moment that is almost not really, it's almost like nothing is happening, but everything is happening. But there's no great melodrama or conflict. He isn't really going anywhere. He's he's kind of going nowhere, as you said. I mean, it in a way, if I compare it to another boxing movie, Rocco and His Brothers, which Alain Delon plays a prize fighter, and it has a certain amount in common. There's a lot of melodrama, and it's even worse. I mean, it's what happens outside of the ring is even more violent and horrific, and it's scary. I mean, that is a scary film. There's a lot of menace, and in this movie, Tully, he's kind of throwing his life away, and he can't get out of his own way, and that has its own innate sense of menace. But the presentation is soft and also luscious. The light and the colors just kind of glow, and the characters glow, and they sort of laugh at each other, with each other. It's the kind of film, even though it's sad, it doesn't make me sad. It's presented, maybe it's not for everybody. It's presented kind of, I can watch it and be detached from the sadness that's happening in the movie. I don't know if you guys have that sense or.
Yeah, the second time I definitely felt more of that, where I wasn't quite so immediately impacted by the characters. I was able to just kind of step back and watch these guys as they live their lives. And I definitely, like I said, the second time felt a lot more of the humanity with them.
I thought, I'm not. I tend to be a little bit more. I don't know if there isn't a hook to a formula that I really love in these sports movies, I tend to get kind of disconnected from them or watch them a little bit more surface. And that's just my own viewing habits, I recognize. But that's why I'm so torn about this movie, because I find it so visually appealing. And I like how you use the word lusciousness. I mean, I can see it. I can almost taste this film. And that's one of the reasons it makes me so sad. Like, I'm so affected by it, by the fact that it just ends in the same sort of cycle of grief. And now it's a cycle of grief for a new boxer to come in and maintain. And it's one of the things that they noted, and I haven't read the book, but that the departure from the end of the film, where Ernie's actually picked up hitchhiking by two women and is then dumped out on the road after making some sort of lascivious move toward these two women. They kick him out of the car and leave him on the side of the road, and it ends up being a very sort of depressing, like much more depressing end to the film than even we got, in the film as it was in Huston's vision. And I wonder, when you look at sort of book to screen departures, like, would that have been more satisfying for me as a final resolution or less? It certainly puts Ernie's trajectory further down the path of a parallel to Tully's. And I can sort of see why they went with a much more muted end.
I really love the detached stare that Stacy Keach gives at the end, and then it just kind of ends after that. For me, it's a perfect ending. I just like, maybe it's more of like a sort of French cinema sensibility that I'm responding to. I'm not really sure. It's like I don't exactly know what it means. It might not mean particularly much, but the mystery of it speaks to me.
Well, it is very interesting, and I love that Huston employed that kind of freeze frame where you have Tully looking out over all these people at this coffee shop in the middle of the night, and you've got that zoom in on his eyes as everything around him essentially freezes, and you just kind of you see him looking at this tableau of life. That it's almost like this connection, this realization with him that it's like this is it. This is where I'm going to be the rest of my life. Sort of look,
Yeah.
Before he turns around and kind of reconnects with Ernie. And then the two of them just sit there in kind of this tableau as they sit there drinking their coffee. I don't know. I think it's an incredibly strong ending. And I love we get that Kris Kristofferson, Help Me Make It Through the Night kicking in again right there, which to me, I agree. I just felt like this was a perfect ending to this film, especially after kind of seeing him have this moment of greatness well, I mean, greatness seemingly, we know that this other boxer that he was boxing against was injured and having a really hard time. But
which is an incredible sequence. The way they tell us that the boxer that comes to town to fight Stacy Keach. You see him in his hotel room. You see him like peeing blood. He's wearing the most incredible like yellow shirt. And then they fight. Then you see him. There's a bit of a scene with Stacy Keach and Nicholas Colasanto and Jeff Bridges and their girlfriends. And then everyone leaves. And then the other boxer, the camera lingers. The other boxer pans him out, and he's just walking by himself. And it's just beautiful. And one of my favorite sequences in the movie is the opening. You see Stacy Keach in bed. It's all one shot. He wakes up. He's in this tiny flophouse room that's light struck. The real sun is coming through the window, and he's in his underwear, and he's got this like comb over that you just don't see actors have this kind of hair nowadays, unless it's a real contrived kind of a thing.
A very brave hairdo for him in this one.
Yeah, but and he's looking for a cigarette. He finds a cigarette, then he's looking for a match, and the whole scene is him looking around his room, follows him around the room, looking for a match. He can't find a match, so then he decides, and there's no dialogue whatsoever. He decides, okay, I'll put my pants on. I'm going to go out. I'm going to get a match. He walks downstairs. You see him pause outside his building, and then he thinks for a second, and then he runs back upstairs, grabs his boxing gear, and then the next scene you see him at the Y with Jeff Bridges, and they start working out. So the whole thing kicks off because there's this guy who would probably just spend the whole day in bed smoking and drinking, but he doesn't have any matches. So that's what kicks everything off is, all right, I guess I have to leave because I don't have any matches, so I can't smoke. And it took me a few times watching it to even put that together, as simple as it is, that I just thought he was, this hard luck guy in his underwear. But it's so beautiful looking. It looks incredible. And there's no menace there. It's sad. He's got brown paper bags and bottles. Not that many, it's not like total dereliction, but somehow it just looks stunning.
Oh, it has all the makings of a great story of redemption and success, right? Of course, we need to see him in this terrible kind of down on your luck state. We need to see him in his underwear in the sort of late morning sun, right? We have to have that, and I think you're right, that subtle sort of nuance of motivation. It's that just the smallest thing actually drives him to make a potentially life-changing decision to get back into the ring, to start training again. I think that's really powerful. I did have a problem with that. I wonder if you could reflect on it. If I am overthinking this, but I've watched it now twice, and I've watched this opening sequence a few more times because it bugs me. It's the audio cue.
Uh-huh.
Is it
when
weird?
The song kicks in?
Yes. So the song actually, it's like the song starts and it's an instrumental version of the song that leads through the gorgeous montage of tragedy in Stockton, and that instrumental version leads over him in the room and looking around the room, and then it fades to silent, and then Kris Kristofferson starts singing again after a few seconds, and I have so much trouble with that. I can't tell if it helps the film and I'm just missing the point, or if it hinders the film.
That's so interesting. It's never bothered me. I've never really thought that much about it, but now that you mention it, it's interesting. It definitely doesn't bother me, but it's very interesting that it bothers you. I totally get it. I totally get it.
Because we've effectively had a scene change, right? I mean, we've certainly had a location. We moved from outside to inside. It feels like the cue should have happened like 30 seconds sooner.
Yeah.
Or later when he leaves the building. I don't know. Andy, tell me I'm overthinking this, and I'll shut up.
It is a strange little thing. It's certainly something that I've picked up on every time that I've watched, but it's never bugged me, I guess. It is one thing that I've certainly noticed. But yeah, I don't know. I guess normally you'd have it all kind of connected as one big thing, but
my memory of it is the cue kicks in when he commits to putting his pants on and leaving the house.
Right, he's getting dressed because I think he's putting his shoes on when the title itself comes up.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like the cue happens. It's a signal that he's committing to leaving the house, which I've always liked, but I totally get that it could be irksome.
Well, irksome to me as a podcaster about movies is certainly not to say that I don't have a lot to learn from director John Huston, and so maybe let's transition into what we should be learning from Huston in this particular piece.
Well, I love that he himself says that the film is about people whose life is running down the drain and they don't know how to plug it.
Uh-huh.
I think that's a great quote. I mean, we've talked about John Huston a number of times on this show. I really enjoy what he brings to the screen here, and this is the first film that he had done completely in the U.S. in quite a period of time, and it was in a period where I know he had been making a lot of ones that had been kind of flopping. But this one did, and this one didn't do great at the box office, but it did get a lot of critical acclaim. So I don't know. I think that he brings a lot to the table here. Having actually been a boxer, I think that is something that he can kind of shed some light on in this whole world of amateur lightweight boxing and all of that. I like what he's doing here.
Even though I'm not bullish on many of the characters in the film, I am incredibly bullish on particularly the final bout, which I think was conceived and shot just beautifully. And for, in terms of me not having a whole lot of emotional momentum for the characters leading up to that point, it went from, 0 to full speed during that bout. It was shot in a way that is sort of indescribable, the way it made such a connection to me, and I didn't expect it at all. How can you talk a little bit about what you get out of that when you're looking at it from the perspective of shooting something like this?
Let's compare it to the most recent Rocky movie, Creed.
Sure.
Which I quite liked. It's a movie with a lot of virtuosic movement, a lot of virtuosic boxing with these elite athletes performing at a very high level. And their movements and the camera movements that respond to them are all virtuosic. Everyone's very muscular. The camera movement is muscular, and there's a lot of great stuff therein. But in Fat City, albeit 40 years ago, 40 plus years ago, these are not elite boxers. They're all guys that are in decent shape that can certainly box better than I can. I don't box, so I can find satisfaction in watching the performative aspect of these athletes doing something better than I can, and then the camera responds to them similarly. But it's only so virtuosic. Their movements, their blocking, and the camera blocking that responds to it. If we were to compare it to something like Raging Bull, which similarly boxers at a really high elite level, and then probably the most virtuosic camera movement that exists in a boxing picture to respond to the boxing movements. So to watch Stacy Keach, who his character gets winded almost immediately, but what they're doing is it's only so special, and the way it's rendered photographically it's very straightforward. There's no it's not stylized. There's a lot in the movie that is stylized and has a lot of style to it, but you don't find that in how the fights are rendered photographically.
It feels, there's a lot of energy with it too. The way that it just feels almost, I don't want to say documentary style, but it does have a sense where these guys are just having a real fight. It doesn't feel choreographed. It just feels like they're really boxing, and the camera's just really kind of there trying to track them. And I like that sense where it does feel like a little more, something about it just gives it a sense of some kinetic kinetic vibe of it in a way that's different from something like Raging Bull, which, I mean, that one really feels almost more like a choreographed dance, the way the camera's moving and the way that Scorsese is throwing in all of his little tricks and sound effects and everything. This one just feels like we're really there watching these guys really boxing, which I really like. This might be a weird comparison, but there was a film with Liam Neeson called Rob Roy, that came out in the 90s that has a sword fight between him and Tim Roth at the end. And likewise, that fight, I don't know why it's always stuck in my head, but it was like, I think probably one of the first sword fights in a movie where it actually felt much more realistic, because like they would be swinging swords for a while and then they'd have to kind of stop and hold their sword on the ground and kind of catch their breath because they're swinging these giant, hunks of metal around. And it actually kind of made me feel like, wow, this feels like a real sword fight. These guys get tired swinging these swords around for a while.
Yeah.
Nothing like the sort of dance of kind of Southpaw or Creed or Cinderella Man. Like all of these things are much, much more sort of choreographed.
Right. And this one actually felt like it was real people. They get tired. You've got that kind of boxer hug where they're kind of leaning on each other, kind of trying to catch their breath for a quick moment before the ref comes and separates them. It just felt really authentic. And because of that, I really got very energized watching them.
Well, the other thing that I think they make good on in this particular sequence, and what I kind of resonate with as we go into the final throes of the film, is that it really cements for me the fact that this bout is just another cog in the machine of Stockton, and these guys are just parts that are completely replaceable, completely fungible in the mechanics of this community. And the fact that he borrows money from people all the time and falls in and out of favor from people, but can come back in and fight a few fights and then get all depressed and leave. Somebody is always going to be there to take his place. And that kind of lends to the overall kind of cultural sadness that I think this film, and I think, Huston does an admirable job of showcasing.
To me, it mitigated by the Nicholas Colasanto character, the Tully's trainer, and his sidekick, who's like the guy, I don't know the actor's name. I don't know what you'd call what he does, but the guy who like carries the bucket and the sponge. And there's a few scenes where the two of them just have this patter that's just hilarious. They're seen in a diner where it's just the two of them. There's a few other scenes where Colasanto's sidekick is talking about Tully, and he's like, I'd always lend him money. It was movies. He's always wants to see movies. And clearly it's like, he was borrowing money from you to buy booze.
Yeah,
like
right.
Probably wasn't going to the movies every day. But it's like, it's very sweet that, he's so gullible. And then there's just like a few fringy characters that really look like they're, probably ex-boxers, a little, punch drunk or something like that just really flesh it out.
Yeah, they had a lot of the cast was full of a lot of boxing people that
weren't
Huston
boxers.
Were boxers.
I know,
Huston,
but they weren't playing boxers in the film. I think the best known was the boyfriend, right?
Yeah, Curtis Coates as Earl, right? He was a former welterweight champion of the world.
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and like Sixto Rodriguez was the one that plays Lucero that is fighting Keach at the end. He was the middleweight and light heavyweight headliner of the middle and late 60s in Northern California. The assistant, Ruben's assistant, was a boxer. There was a bunch of different boxers that he kind of cast all through. So if for people who were familiar with kind of this type of boxer in the 60s and 70s, then you might recognize a few faces. We do a segment on this show called First Shot, Last Shot, where we look at the first shot and the last shot of the movie and just kind of see how they what kind of story we're getting from these, and I think it's interesting here. The first shot, we get this aerial of the freeway construction in Stockton, kind of the future, right? It's the development of the freeway, followed by this montage of what the life on Poverty Row in Stockton actually looks like. And then the last shot, we have these two guys sitting in this coffee shop, this very long shot, this tableau that kind of pulls back a little bit as they sit silently drinking their coffee, and we hear a little bit of Kristofferson singing. What do you get out of the way that Huston kind of frames this film with these two shots? Anything in particular?
What a great question. I'm glad you isolated those two things, because it really puts it in context for me. I mean, the first shot, you see the entire city, just as you might, in the same way that if you took a similar shot of a different city, it might look very similar. But he's showing this small universe of a city the way that almost looks like a quilt. It's like an overhead aerial view that could be, almost makes it look like something different, like an abstract painting or a quilt, or just, blocks of color and shapes. But therein is the world of the film. And then at the end, within that, probably, ostensibly somewhere within that quilt, is probably that bar or the coffee shop where you have the character going off the rails, who's starting to have some promise but can't get out of his own way. And he's just having that moment where who knows what's really happening, but he's just in utter despair and not sure if he's ever going to get out of it. And it's just so emblematic of the human condition, and it's just such a satisfying cinematic way for me within the universe, the small universe that you see in that first shot.
It's an interesting kind of unfolding. I mean, the montage we've kind of already mentioned, but I love how it's like, I mean, I swear there's a point in there where it's like 4 or 5 images all kind of folding over each other as we kind of start, far up on the freeway, and then kind of come down into Stockton and into kind of this area. It's this really interesting way that it kind of gives us this world, and kind of it's almost like the city of Stockton is unfolded for us, and we kind of get right down in there, ending up on the La Barata, the cheap one, as far as the little slum that Tully is living in. Yeah. And then that beautiful tableau at the end. I mean, it's an interesting look at these two guys. We are now down in there, and we're just kind of, it's almost like we're looking at a painting of life in this. And it's, as we, at the beginning, we're seeing the future. We're seeing the freeway that's going to be cutting through Stockton and taking people forward, the whole idea of the freeway being the future and all of that. But here we are kind of almost in the underbelly, under the freeway, the part of the city that's never really going to change. And these are the people who will always be there, even though the future kind of passes them by. I think it's a great way to kind of begin and end this film and kind of give us this world with these characters in it. It's
beautifully emblematic of the emotional journey too, right? We get this tour, this sort of kind of this Google Earth view tour of external to internal, like broad to very narrow view of their physical space. And the last shot gives us kind of resolution to a very similar view of their internal journey in this film, which ends up going very much nowhere. And I think it ends up being a really powerful pairing between the physical and the emotional, using these two pieces.
That's well said. I like that.
Let's look a little bit at the cast. We've already talked about a bit about Stacy Keach. He was originally not the first intended to play Tully.
That was Marlon Brando. They actually went to Marlon Brando first to talk to him about it.
Wow, I never knew that.
Yeah, which it seems crazy watching this film, knowing that Brando was ended up doing Godfather pretty much at the same time. But Brando was being a little cagey. He enjoyed the script, but he wasn't making up his mind. And so Huston, I guess he said, I don't like waiting around for actors to make up their mind. So he just kept looking, and ended up with Stacy Keach after having seen The Traveling Executioner. And reportedly, Brando later said that he was disappointed, but he ended up in The Godfather. So he made out okay, I think.
There's another universe somewhere where Stacy Keach is actually The Godfather.
Yeah,
that's a universe I'd like to visit.
Yeah,
he did actually get knocked out in this film, right? That was the one that the shot of him getting knocked out is the shot they used in the film,
right? Yeah,
if I understand that correctly.
Yep, Sixto pops him a good one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow, I didn't know that either.
It's the one where he nails him on the jaw.
The more I'm going to learn.
Yeah, it's the one where he gets hit in the jaw by Lucero, and he kind of turns, and I mean, even Keach looks a little dazed as he falls down to the ground and is just kind of sitting there for a minute while the ref counts before he stands back up. But yeah, it's one of those things. I mean, Keach said, working training with these guys, he said he got into the best shape of his life. My respect for fighters was elevated. I came to understand how hard they work to get into shape. And I definitely think it's true. I mean, when you're doing these boxing films, I think there's a certain level of reality you need to give, and so you really need to train and really learn how to box and kind of almost put yourself into it. It's a little different than baseball. You're actually getting pummeled for the love of your art.
Yeah.
This Jeff Bridges as Ernie. I think this film actually it really showcases everything Jeff Bridges is truly exceptional at in terms of playing understated, unexuberant characters that are super engaging to watch moving on screen.
I showed a clip of this film to a friend somewhat recently, showing him the scene where Jeff Bridges first walks into the Lido gym where Nicholas Colasanto works. And you just see him kind of standing there. My friend said, it's amazing. I've seen him do that look or that shrug so many times in other movies. Like, to see him do it however old he was in this movie, 19 or 20. He's so, himself.
He's an actor who conveys so much with his looks. I think when Faye is telling him, that she's pregnant, there's just a look on his face, the way that his face kind of shifts and changes, or even earlier in their first conversation when she kind of reveals that she was a virgin. The way that you can read so much in his face. He puts so much out there, and whatever it is he's saying, you can still read kind of what's going on in his mind. And I just feel like that has been Jeff Bridges through his whole career. I mean, you can get so much out of him, and his eyes can convey so much in just the littlest looks. It's just fascinating to watch him.
This is officially the earliest film I think I've seen him in, 72, right? He'd done a couple before, right?
Yeah, Last Picture Show was right before
Show.
this.
Yeah, I'd seen that. I'd seen Last Picture Show, but Yin and Yang of Mr. Go, Halls of Anger, I've seen none of those things.
Plus all the TV that he did.
All the TV. Yeah, maybe I saw him in Sea Hunt in an old rerun of Sea Hunt, I guess. But yeah, he was. You can see just how charismatic he is on screen in this film, just in that sequence alone.
He says very little in this movie. It is a very visual film in the sense that there isn't that much dialogue. There is dialogue, but there's not. It's not too talky, and particularly his character.
There's a lot of moments between him and Tully where it's almost like you're kind of watching this guy mulling over in his head, the friendship he has with this boxer. I mean, he acknowledges that he had seen Tully in a fight, even though Tully ended up losing. But it's like he knew Tully was a great, at one point. And it's almost like he's mulling over in his head, like, is it benefiting me to keep hanging out with this guy, or is it really not going to get me anywhere? Yeah. But he kind of keeps sticking in there, and it's interesting to watch. I really enjoy him in this.
Okay, Susan Tyrrell as Oma. Now I know I'm going to get letters, but my experience watching Susan Tyrrell, Andy, forgive me, I had the same feeling I'm sure you get watching The Fifth Element every time Chris Tucker comes on screen.
Wait,
wow,
enlighten me. What is? I'm not privy to.
Do you remember Fifth Element? Did you see that one?
Yeah.
So Ruby Rod, Ruby Rod, and he's the fast talking space DJ, and right. Andy doesn't like.
I really hate that movie.
Okay.
I like Chris Tucker in plenty of other things, but
I'm
that
just
character,
saying. Yeah. That was a tough character. I had a similar response to Susan Tyrrell as Oma. I am baffled by the critical reviews that she gets for her performance in this film. I actually really love her sort of understatedness in the first sequence when we meet her. I think her energy is just great in that sequence, and they have this weird conversation, Tully and Oma, as he's kind of having one conversation and she's definitely having another. I really like that. And then when she goes off the rails, I'm no longer engaged with her, and she obviously, I've already come to terms that she needs medical intervention at this point for her alcoholism and clearly some other spectrum disorder, and it takes me out of the film.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's what I love about her. I think that it's an amazing portrayal of an alcoholic, and I am just so broken up by watching this woman who's just always asking for another cream sherry.
Yeah,
and hardly eats. I mean, I'm fascinated by her as a character, and it's heartbreaking to watch.
There's one line where maybe she says to Earl, where she said, "I want a cream sherry," and the way she says it makes me laugh every time. My wife and I will say that to each other, not even just to get a laugh. And I know what you mean. It makes perfect sense that you'd be put off. But there's something I think she's really funny, like in an intentional kind of way, that it's not like I love watching people suffer in life or in movies, but there's something about the way she says those lines that makes me laugh, and it does draw me in. And then the parts later when she really goes off the rails and they get into fights, to me, those don't go on too long. They just about at the point where I start to think, I don't really want to watch these guys fighting for that much more. It seems to end, and then we're on to something else. So I always feel saved by whomever it is, Huston, his editor. I never get into that space, but I understand that you would. It's in some ways like there's this one scene in the bar when Stacy Keach and Susan Tyrrell first kind of hook up while Earl's in prison. It really goes on for quite a while, and she's talking about like her exes and how her ex-husband raped her, and then Stacy Keach like bangs his head into the jukebox, which makes her like him, and it's so dysfunctional and alcoholic. And again, it's not like I love watching dysfunction and alcoholism in life or in movies, but there's something about the way it's conveyed in that bar, and it looks incredible. It's just luscious looking, and there's something about it that just draws me in. Almost, I'll compare it to another movie for a second. The Popeye Doyle character in French Connection. Oh. Occasionally, he's such a despicable person, and he's kind of this terrible guy. But I find myself when I watch that movie wanting to be like him, not in the parts where he's like doing impressive stuff and chasing down criminals, but even when he's despicable, there's something. It's like he's an attractive brute, and I think Susan Tyrrell she's an attractive brute for me. I know it's not for everyone.
That is a really interesting comparison. I don't think I'm going to have to chew on that one in particular. The attractive brute characterization is really great, because when you're talking about Popeye Doyle, you're talking about a guy who, and I'm just like you. I mean, this is a guy who knows how to exercise the power that he has taken from the world around him, right? Not even just when he's, but sort of socially, or when he's in the bar and the picking your feet in Poughkeepsie. I mean, he's exercising power in a way that is really subversively attractive.
Yeah.
I'm going to need to watch Susan Tyrrell again in that light, because it's such an interesting character. It's such a twist on that character, making her a woman in this film in the 70s, like what it takes for her to exercise a similar power on screen. I think that says a lot.
And I think it's also amazing that, I mean, she was mid-20s when she made this film, and she just feels like she has the world, just weighing down on her shoulders. She feels beaten down. She feels at least 20 years older.
At least.
She was in her mid-20s when she did.
Yeah, she was like about 26 or 27. Isn't it amazing?
She seems at least 10 years older.
Yeah, right.
Every bit.
That's crazy. I love the scene that you brought up when the two of them are in the bar, and it's that antagonistic relationship that becomes very friendly as they kind of end up connecting, and the whole "you can count on me" right down the line, like all of that stuff. It's to me, it was like the perfect example of dysfunction and how a couple people who are dysfunctional, if the gears line up just right, all of a sudden everything can kind of mesh for a little while, and everything can spin properly. But it's easy to see those gears kind of get disconnected. But just like the two of them, I think for me, the moment that really made her character sing is when, right after this, when they start walking down the street and she just kind of looks at him and she's just like, I just love you so much.
Oh yeah, like the second time they meet.
Yeah, it's like that, man, that is an amazingly powerful moment, because this woman, they've only met 2 times, but here she is just kind of giving herself completely to this guy because, she's just so dysfunctional, and he's providing exactly what she needs at that moment. Oh, it's just heartbreaking.
Yeah. And to me, when she says, I love you so much, after telling us about all her exes, and he's got the same issues, I feel like it's very balanced between the two of them, and just being a mess. But it's like, oh, so these are people who fall in love really quickly, like in a bar, they're drunk and all that. But something about him banging his head into the jukebox. It just like breaks the ice for her. And it's like, okay, I'm in love. I no longer have to be alone. I no longer have to be in despair. My husband or boy, Earl, who's in prison. Like, so it's just like, to me, it makes perfect sense. Like, she was alone in despair. Now there's this guy who's willing to do something crazy for her, and it just totally breaks the ice. And it doesn't. It's disturbing, and yet I totally buy it.
I think when we're talking about her and buying her performance, it's the sort of yin to her yang is Curtis Cokes. He has won. This is his feature credit. There was the Muhammad Ali World Heavyweight Championship. He was a guest as himself because obviously he was a professional boxer. But that is possibly the most disappointing thing about this film, that there wasn't anything else in his career, Curtis Cokes, as an actor, because I thought he was really nuanced and a beautiful partner for her in the very few scenes we have with them together.
Yeah, he's special. He's very special.
Yeah.
I think the presence of certain non-actors like Curtis Cokes in this movie, it totally works. It's not, and the movie isn't hyper populated by people or actors like him, which I think is what makes it work. There's a dynamic quality to how people like him, and probably the guy who's the assistant to Nicholas Colasanto, like how those guys are used and accentuating what's special about them without making the momentum of the story flatten out, which sometimes happens in movies where dramatic movies with non-actors. It's just kind of like flat lines.
Nicholas Colasanto, I went back and watched a couple of Cheers episodes after I watched this movie the first time, and I know they make a big deal about how his sort of backstory in the show is that he was a baseball coach, but I just can't see him as any other kind of coach than a boxer's ringside coach after this film. So I'm all for revisionist history. In this case, So development, getting this thing made. We've already talked about the fact that this was shot mostly on location in Stockton. Did a great job of demonstrating kind of what this film, or where this film was set. Cinematography by Conrad L. Hall. I feel like this is your wheelhouse. The big question for me when I think about this in the context of you, especially when I look at the work that you have done, I'm trying, this is probably my failing more than anybody else's, more than sort of the world, but I'm trying to put myself in a place of what is it that you are learning from a film like this that you find yourself inspired by to go apply in your own work?
Great question. There's many different things that speak to me about the film. I would say the primary one is it's a dramatic film from a script with actors that's not, despite the fact that there's this documentary montage in the beginning that's integrated, it's a dramatic film with actors reading from a script that's blocked and shot and designed in such a way that that I feel like it has this like heightened realism. It has naturalistic qualities, but it also has certain theatrical qualities, like, you know, Susan Tyrrell's performance, or Stacy Keach, or Nicholas Colasanto. Like there's these dramatic actors, experienced, many of whom did TV, integrated into this piece that is very realistic. And so that's the primary thing. My love, you know, the thing I love the most is shooting movies that are not, you know, working from a script and being designed, but, you know, doing them in such a way that ideally you get to a place where things feel real, or a certain kind of naturalistic, not just improvised. I've worked on things where there's been improvisation and had good experiences. Of just recently shot for Judd Apatow, who's big on improvising. But even working with Judd, it's like we're working from a framework where we're designing something that's based on a script, and it's blocking. It's not, you know, it's not documentary work. So to me, this film is an excellent example of making a movie from a very specific framework. But in the execution of this film, it just glows. To me, that Fat City it's so effervescent. And it's just, you know, a big part of that is the photography, and certainly the production and costume design. But it's just, to me, it's so well integrated into the whole. The photography, Conrad Hall's work, to me, is very well integrated and incredibly beautiful. It's beautiful up until this kind of ideal point where it stands out and it's luscious and it glows, but it's not so dense or overbearing that it becomes distracting to you know, the story, or, you know, the world of the movie, this world in Stockton.
Yeah, Ray Stark, the producer, didn't quite see it that way. I mean, I love it too. I think it's just stunning to look at, just beautiful. I love the darkness through it. Definitely something that was kind of big at the time. Certainly we would see that with Godfather coming right around the corner from this. But Stark said he didn't like how dark it was, and he actually fought with Conrad Hall about it constantly, apparently. And it sounded like, what I heard is, in the end, he wouldn't actually let him time the picture. He kind of took that away from him, and making sure that he got to be in there.
You guys probably would know this better because you're, I think, more studious than I am. But I heard that Huston was pushing Conrad Hall to make things even darker, that it was not just Conrad Hall on his own devices making things dark. I heard particularly the bar scenes. Huston was pushing him to make things dark. I don't know if you saw that in any of your research.
I feel like I do remember reading something about that where Huston was wanting it to be that way. He wanted it to be darker and everything. I can't remember specifically though, but I do feel like that was something that I read.
Conrad Hall definitely said he could not watch the film for a long time, and he was very non-specific. I'm guessing it's because of what you found out about Ray Stark, and certainly if he was not allowed to time the picture, I'm sure that would make it difficult to watch. But then he said, you know, in his later years, that he eventually obtained a print and would show it to students because so many people would ask him about it, that he eventually just embraced it. But yeah, that sounds horrific. Like, to be the idea as a cinematographer, you prepare something, then you go shoot it, but then you really finish the work when you time the movie, you know, which is, for maybe people listening who don't know what that is,
Please.
It's you sit with a colorist, a professional colorist, and go scene by scene, and you make things brighter if they need to be, if they're able to be made brighter, or darker if they're too bright, or you add a little bit of red if things are looking too blue, or add a little bit of blue if they're looking too red. And nowadays we do all of this digitally, and it's become a very streamlined, simple kind of a process where you can sit in a room and you can really affect just about anything, and you can isolate people's faces, and you can, if a window is too bright, just that window can be made darker. At this time, Fat City was there was nothing digital in the process, and the movie was shot on film. The movie was timed on film, which is to say that any corrections would have to be done photochemically in a lab, so that you would you'd take a negative of it wouldn't be the original negative, but you'd create a dupe negative and then strike another print, and you'd basically be using this photochemical process that's very painstaking and slow. So it was a lot more difficult back then if something was exposed a certain way, which is to say, if you, how you commit the image to negative, capturing it in camera. If it was a certain way, it was more difficult to do any shifts or correct it later. So now, and especially if you're photographing digitally, it's a lot easier to manipulate things later, and a lot of cinematographers don't like that because people can come in after the fact and change things around, make them a lot brighter if you wanted them darker, or vice versa. So the concept of a cinematographer being kept out of the color timing process at the end is basically, it's just horrific that might happen, because what it means is all of the work that you've put into the movie does not get to really be completed. Interestingly, there are instances where, as a cinematographer, if you get very busy, sometimes your schedule might prohibit you from fully participating. There's now, especially with digital, many people do it remotely, by, going into a lab in whatever city you're in, and they sort of simulcast the color timing process.
Right.
Luckily, I've turned down projects to keep myself available to time movies precisely for this reason, because it's one of the most satisfying parts of the process. It's almost like, as a cinematographer, it's almost like your reward for all of this.
Right. You get to see it all look the way that you were intending it to look.
Well, especially, yeah. I mean, I can imagine if you start a project with a vision, you actually don't get to finish it until you've timed it. You don't get to see the vision.
It. That's correct.
Yeah.
That's absolutely correct.
I think it speaks a lot to the work that Hall was doing with this film, the fact that it still looks as good as it does, even if he wasn't able to actually do the timing on it.
I think at that time there was a school of cinematographers, and I know Gordon Willis, who shot The Godfather, and Annie Hall, and a lot of amazing movies. The cinematographers of this era would talk about exposing the negative in such a way that it could not be shifted or manipulated by anyone else later. And Gordon Willis talked about doing that with Godfather, which at the time was, it's still a big presence in everybody's lives, but it was an enormous production at that time. And he was doing a lot of rash underexposure and a lot of big actors. And he was doing it in such a way that you really couldn't change very much. There's just there's very little latitude. We call it making the negative very thin, which is to say that there isn't a lot of information to work with if you wanted to try and boost it back up. And it's probably the case in much of the Fat City scenes, particularly the scenes in the bar where there's beautiful wide shots in the bar, kind of like establishing sort of master shots where everyone's in silhouette, and if you look at it, it's like there's no information in that when people are in silhouette. If you wanted to bring out detail in their faces, like it's just, you can tell it's just not there. It's the kind of thing that can freak out certain people. I don't know, producers, investors, even directors, and yeah, it's there's different ways to describe working like that. Sometimes we say working on the edge of the negative, which is to say, you shoot things in such a way, but naturalistically, without a lot of fill light. And if you're on the edge, sometimes you might fall off the edge and not be able to bring people's faces back, it's the kind of thing that can make other people very nervous. And when you shoot film, the interesting thing about shooting film versus digital is, and particularly at this time, in 1972, there was no such thing as the video tap, which I don't know, for those not familiar, if you shoot with a film camera, now, in 2016, if you shoot film, there's a little miniature video camera inside of the film camera that you can feed to a monitor and at least see the framing of what the film camera is seeing. You won't actually know what it looks like till the film is processed. Whereas when you shoot digital, there's a direct feed and you pretty much see what the camera is shooting with a digital camera. It's always slightly different than what you see on set, but it's very, very close. So in the old days in 72, if things, you really don't know what you have until 24 hours later, sometimes more if you're on location. Probably they didn't have a lab in Stockton, California. So maybe they would see footage 48 hours after the fact. And yeah, once you're done shooting a scene, if those guys weren't, Ray Stark or if John Huston weren't liking it, then it's a Megillah to go back and reshoot something. So
yeah, it takes a lot more work.
Yeah,
it's fascinating. I think the look for this film is just a really beautiful look. It definitely kind of has an Edward Hopper-esque sort of vibe to it. Especially like you look at the scene in the bar. I mean, it really feels, almost darker than Edward Hopper, really. I mean, it's just so dark. There's so little light in there. But it does feel so natural. And I think that's what I really enjoy about the look that Conrad L. Hall brought to the film here. Let's jump forward and talk about some music here. I mean, we already talked about Help Me Make It Through the Night, Kris Kristofferson's song, which I hear it was actually a new recording for it. I heard that Marvin Hamlich, who was the music supervisor on the film, who had already been doing great things, and just in a couple of years would be making great mixes for all the songs in The Sting. But here he actually had Kris Kristofferson record a version that my understanding is even more melancholy than the original version. And it certainly is, but man, does this song just stick in my head. It's just such a touching song. It's so haunting. There's such a plea for that help in this song. And I just really dig this song now. And Hamlish, there are a number of songs. I think the score in the film is very sparse. I'm not sure if there was really much of any score to speak of, actually. Now that I think about it, I remember hearing a lot of songs throughout, but it felt very just kind of like present in the real world. Like we just have a few songs here and there, just kind of setting the tone and setting the pace for this with this Help Me Make It Through the Night, particularly bookending it. But then also we have some instrumental bits of it throughout the film. Just I think it really added to the vibe for the film.
They used there were two other tracks: "The Look of Love," Dusty Springfield, and "If," performed by Bread. But I think you're right. I mean, I don't have any notion of an actual score. It was really sparse.
Yeah, that's my memory of it too. I don't have any of the credits in front of me or anything, but it seems, I was always surprised to see Marvin Hamlich's name there, the guy who wrote the music for a chorus line. It's like, wow, this movie? It's so interesting.
And just a couple years, like I said, he'd go on to win that Oscar for finding the right music to put into the Sting, and really kind of help create the world for that particular film, which I think he did a fantastic job in that film. Speaking of awards, this film, Susan Tyrrell was the only person who got an Oscar nomination in this film for supporting actress. She lost to Eileen Heckert in the movie Butterflies Are Free. I've only seen the stage version of that. I've never seen the film. Have you seen the film of that before?
No, not a year.
Mm-mm.
A little bit of a kind of a hippie movie, but it was interesting. I could potentially understand why that actress might have won based on at least the character in the play. And then Susan Tyrrell also got a New York Film Critics Circle nomination and a National Society of Film Critics nomination. Nobody else got nominated for this film, which is really disappointing.
Although you uncovered a story, Andy, about Stacy Keach and the New York Film Critics Association that you have to tell, because I was stymied by this.
Right. So Keach, as far as the nomination for Best Actor for the New York Film Critics Association, he said, or this was what I read, under the then extant rules, Stacy Keach should have been awarded Best Actor honors from the New York Film Critics Circle for his portrayal of Tully, as it required only a plurality of the vote. Keach was the top vote getter for Best Actor. At the time, the NYCC was second in prestige only to the Academy Awards. And some actors and film critics or filmmakers considered it actually a superior honor, and it was a major influence on subsequent Oscar nominations. But a vocal faction of the NYFCC, dismayed by the rather low percentage of votes that would have given Keach the award, successfully demanded a rule change so that the winner would have to obtain a majority. In subsequent balloting, Keach failed to win a majority of the vote, and he lost ground to his main rival, Marlon Brando, in The Godfather. However, Brando could not gain a majority either. A compromise candidate, Laurence Olivier, in Sleuth, eventually was awarded the Best Actor honors. So
funny.
Just
So
crazy.
congratulations, Laurence Olivier. This comes with great heart and forethought.
That's the Best Actor asterisk.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, goodness. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about the numbers, and then we'll get into why everybody shows up, shall we? How'd it do?
I wish I had more information on how it did, other than it didn't do well. I do have this little bit from John Huston's bio, an open book. He said, Fat City had a great reception when it was first shown at Cannes in 1972. After the screening, I walked into an adjoining hall to meet the press, and they gave me a standing ovation. When that happened, I was sure it was going to be a success. But no. Wherever it was shown, it was beautifully reviewed, but audiences didn't care for it. It's a fine picture, no question. Well conceived, well acted, made with deep love and considerable understanding on the part of everyone involved. I suppose the public simply found it too sad. It has at least one devoted fan. Ray Stark considers it the best picture he has ever produced. So yeah, I couldn't find any numbers on this thing. It was a little disappointing. I was hoping to get something, but it didn't do well, which is really too bad. This is definitely a film that more people should see.
Well, it is currently 100% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. People seem to, at least the 17 reviews of critics' reviews, make it loud and proud on Tomatoes. Let's go ahead and rank it. What do you say?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel, and this is where the rubber meets the road. Filmo a filmo. We're going to see how Fat City stands on our list of all of the films that we have reviewed on this very show. Andy?
First up, we have it against Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? This is notoriously the center of our chart, so everything ends up coming up against this for some reason. So we call it the Oh Brother block. Will it pass the Oh Brother block or not?
I think it's an interesting film. I'm very curious. I'm going to withhold my vote until I hear Sam's, because cinematographically, I think you look at color tone, and that's another film that they made.
I'll be completely honest, and I'll be completely honest. I've never seen Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? So
Shock
it's out there.
and awe.
It's out there in the public. I'd feel much more comfortable being honest than trying to pretend like I've seen it.
We'll forgive you.
Andy?
Well, I would say that I think Fat City is the better film, but I would find Oh Brother an easier film to watch. So I'm actually going to pick Oh Brother based on that.
That's certainly where I fall. So Oh Brother is going to take it for me.
All right. Next up, we have Fat City or The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, Terry Gilliam's box office disaster from 1989. I'm going to say Fat City.
Fat City.
Oh, see, so now on principle, it doesn't even matter. I will also go Fat City.
There you go. Fat City, or going back to 1942 with King's Row.
I haven't seen it.
I'm going to say Fat City.
Really?
Yeah.
We liked King's Row, Andy.
We did, but I really liked Fat City.
All right. I'll give it to you.
All right. There you go. Fat City or A League of Their Own, little Tom Hanks action. You know how I feel about Tom Hanks.
Definitely Fat City. Although I love A League of Their Own.
There's just a lot more joy, certainly a lot more joy in A League of Their Own.
I'm a Tom Hanks sucker, so what am I going to do? I'm going to say A League of Their Own.
You know what? I can't. I'm a little surprised at myself. I'm going to go Fat City on this one.
Wow. Okay.
I know. Right. I'm a little bit surprised. You guys have actually made a pretty good case.
It's a great movie. I really enjoy it. I really like. I watched it the second time, and I was just like, man, I just really dig this movie.
Yeah.
So yeah, Fat
It's
City
killer.
or The Bank Job. This is the Jason Statham bank robbery film.
I have not seen it.
It's a solid film. I'm going to say Fat City though.
Yeah, I'm also going to say Fat City.
Fat City or Kind Hearts and Coronets.
Wow. That is a really good movie.
That is a really good movie.
But I'd say Fat City.
Oh, I'm a Kind Hearts on this one. I adore
man,
that
I am.
film.
Wow.
I'm really torn on these two. Boy.
Alec Guinness as everyone. Come on.
That's true. I'm going to say Fat City though.
All right.
I know. Fat City or Stagecoach, 1939. A little John Ford action.
I haven't seen Stagecoach. Are you guys even going to air this now that I haven't seen it?
Yes, it will. It will air.
This will air. Your list of shame has grown on this in the last hour.
Okay.
It's a homework list for you. Definitely Fat City for me.
Fat City for me too. Sorry, John.
Fat City or The Long Kiss Goodnight.
The Long Kiss Goodnight. The
Rennie
Altman
Harlan
movie with Elliot Gould?
No, this is no, that's The Long Goodbye. This is The Long Kiss Goodnight with Samuel L. Jackson and Gina
definitely
Davis.
Fat City.
I was wondering how long it would take how many seconds between the time you said the movie to the time he picked Fat City.
The Long Kiss Goodbye, that would be, I might really be torn, but The Long Kiss Goodnight.
Fat City is definitely the better film. The Long Kiss Goodnight is a total guilty pleasure of mine, though. It's super easy to watch.
That's why I'm going to do you a favor, Andy. I'm also going to say Fat City.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah,
Thank
you're
you.
off the hook.
I'm off the hook. All right. Well, that puts it at 128, which is, I think, it's actually right under Oh Brother. Look at that.
A respectable middle. That may become our new block.
It could be, yeah. Fat City might be our new block in the middle there. So this was a really fantastic film. I'm really glad you introduced it to us.
Oh, definitely. I love this. It is like you said. Even though I didn't have the connection with the people and the story, I found really sad. It was such a beautiful work of art that it's too good not to celebrate. What's
your star rating, Sam? I'm guessing probably out of 5. You're probably going to say 5.
Yeah, this is if I had to pick one today, this is my favorite movie, so I'd definitely give it 5.
I'm a 4-star. I could see it. I could actually see this one climbing up as I continue watching it throughout my life. What about you, Pete?
Yeah, I can see it. I was originally a good 3.5, 4. I think I'll be a good 4-star. I think that'll be a good landing place for me. I need to watch it again. Especially after this conversation.
Yeah, it's definitely a strong film.
All right. Well, let's talk about you then. What are you working on right now, and that you are most proud of? We talked in the beginning about some of the projects that you have worked on most recently, but what are you excited about right now?
Well, there's a movie that's out right now in theaters called Maggie's Plan that with Greta Gerwig, Julianne Moore, Ethan Hawke, and Maya Rudolph and Bill Hader, that I'm really proud of. It's kind of an adult Manhattan, New York, Woody Allen style comedy that Rebecca Miller wrote and directed that I really like. So I stand behind it. Everyone should go see it.
Definitely have to check that one out. And then you're doing some TV also right now, right?
I just wrapped a show called Crashing for Judd Apatow. We've just finished the first season. It's for HBO, and it's a new show. It should be out next year, and that was an awesome experience. It was great getting to watch Judd do his thing.
Do you find a big difference in working in the TV world from film?
Yes, I mean somewhat. What Judd told me when he hired me was he was interested in my work in movies. It was what drew him to me, and his hope was to make a cinematic feeling, cinematic looking kind of a TV show. So in that regard, he was very open to things that I've done before, but there's just at the end of the day, it was a TV show. We had I shot 5 episodes. We
would very often shoot 2 at a time, which we call block shooting. So we would, it was just it's a different way of working. And then, unlike a movie where you prep and then you go shoot the whole thing, in TV, you prep, then you go shoot, then you go back to prep the next block, then you go back to shoot. So it was interesting. It was actually my first experience shooting a proper TV show.
Sounds like fun, and I guess there's always season 2.
Yeah.
To get some more experience, right?
Yeah, hopefully. I'm knocking on wood.
Very cool, very cool. Well, where should people find you? Do you have a home online anywhere? Do you tweet anything, or where people can learn more about you?
I don't really have much of an online presence. I don't have Facebook. I don't do Twitter. My Instagram is at country_club, which is just like, it's not country_club. You can see random photos that I take. It's not like, I'm not hard selling myself.
It's just whatever strikes your fancy at the moment.
Like my reel is available. Like if you Google Sam Levy DP reel, it goes to my agent's website where you can see, trailers from movies I've shot, commercials that I've shot, music videos I've shot, which is just, like a portfolio for people to look at. But I don't, in general, I certainly don't try and hide or anything, but I try to let the work speak for itself. And then I try and meet interesting people who want to do interesting work. And I don't know. I don't do that much social media stuff or I don't know.
Well, it's all good. You brought a great film to our forefront of the show here, which, I hadn't, it was one of those movies I had heard about a lot, hadn't seen it. I'm glad I finally got to watch it. So thank you so much. And thanks for joining us in the Next Reel Speakeasy, Sam.
It was my pleasure. Thank you. You're welcome. And thank you for having me. It was really fun. I learned a lot about this movie that I love from your guys' diligence, which I clearly don't have when it comes to researching things I love.
We really appreciate that. Thanks, Sam.
Absolutely.
And thanks. Fantastic.
And thanks to our friends over at DDA for making this happen. And for you out there, we hope you enjoyed our show. If you like what you heard, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Instagram, Pinterest, Letterboxd, Flickchart, and YouTube. And don't forget to head on over to iTunes, leave us a rating and comment. It really does help more people find us. Thanks again for tuning in. Until next time, I'm going to go pour myself a cream sherry.
I'm gonna use you to be my friend.
It's hard to believe that we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
So many great conversations over the years about so many great movies. All that said, producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes.
Becoming a Next Reel member gives you access to all sorts of additional and exclusive content. Plus, you're helping us keep the lights on. Just head to thenextreel.com/membership, where you can learn more about becoming a member, which costs a measly $5 a month, practically the same as one fancy coffee drink. And you get so much more.
Every month, we record a bonus episode exclusively for members. Those episodes cover movies from whatever series we're covering at the moment, or add to previous series.
Some movies we've covered that only members get to hear us discuss include The Blues Brothers,
The Russia House,
Naked Lunch,
Independence Day,
The Hot Rock,
and Relic, the better one. Plus, members get to vote on what we're going to discuss for those episodes.
We also record additional pre- and post-show content in regular episodes that only members get to hear.
Like conversations about similarly themed movies.
And answering listener questions from our live member chat.
Speaking of our live member chat, we record almost all of our episodes in Discord, where members can chat right along with us live.
Members get access to other members-only channels in our Discord community as well. On top of all that, members get all episodes a full week earlier than everyone else in a private Next Reel feed just for them that includes all the shows in the Next Reel family. The Next Reel, the Film Board,
movies we like, Sitting in the Dark, and more new projects on the way.
To top it all off, members don't have to listen to ads. We've already eliminated those annoying, dynamically inserted ads that, let's face it, we all hated.
We are listening to you.
We love podcasting for a living, and those ads helped pay the bills. Now, we're counting on you, dear listener.
We promise we aren't going back to those terrible, dynamically inserted ads that don't relate to us at all. All we ask is that you consider supporting the Next Reel family of podcasts with a membership.
Again, it's $5 per month or $55 per year. Just head to thenextreel.com/membership.
thenextreel.com/membership. Get your access to early, ad-free episodes with bonus content, member bonus episodes, and access to member channels and live streams in Discord by signing up today.